we can answer the questions. It's been
Okay.
a lot of years.
It's true. Well, I've been trying to, cover all the bases, everybody that was involved with all the different aspects of the program. Mr. Rushworth there told me that you were involved in with the suit,
Mm-hmm.
pressure suit. Okay. Notes out here. Okay. Well, first of all, can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Well, trying to put it together, I was a pilot physiologist and came home from Korea and went to Edwards. And when I got to Edwards, of course, that was the time and period that a lot of the flying was being done up there that we don't see today. The X airplanes were pretty prevalent. And being assigned to the altitude chamber gave me a start in the pressure suit business, but also being a pilot and interested in that particular end of it was advantageous too. So I spent a good deal of my time, more time flying probably than working the altitude chamber part. We had non-rated officers who did most of the teaching of courses, and that gave me more free time to pursue the areas of flight testing. And so when the pressure suits, I had experience in the old partial pressure suits, so when the full pressure suit really was looking like it was going to get into the X-15 program, well, then we knew we were going to have to support it. And so at that point in time, then you had to figure out how to adapt the suit to the aircraft and to the people and how we were going to operate with it. So basically that was really my background. A fighter pilot with a physiology background.
What aircraft did you fly for?
I flew 51 and the 86.
So you mainly were working in the altitude chamber, and that's how you got
Yes, well, after I came out of Korea, I went to Japan, and we set up the first altitude chamber in the Far East over there, built the building and the whole bit. Excuse me. And then when I came home, I was sent directly to Edwards.
Was there any involvement with the pressure suits and stuff on the earlier X-planes prior to X-15?
No.
You didn't have any involvement? They didn't do
No,
any
because
testing?
they were essentially all through flying by the I got to Edwards in 1957.
So when did you become involved in the X-15 program specifically?
Well, before the rollouts, when they started, the airplane hadn't been built, when they started being concerned about how it was going to be supported.
So as soon as you arrived at Edwards, you went right into the
Yeah.
X-15 program pretty much.
1957.
Well, the original pressure suit was known as the MC2 for the David Clark Company.
Mm-hmm.
And then it changed to the AP22S2.
Yeah, and all sorts
Yeah.
of numbers, but it still was, all of them were made by the David Clark Company.
They were, okay. What was the differences between the MC2 and the AP22?
Well, the MC2 suit had an upper portion and a lower portion, and almost like a inner tube, and you rolled the seal together to make it. And it took about 3 rolls or 4 rolls to make sure that you had a good seal. And it fit inside the knit garment that allowed you to have some mobility and freedom of movement. And that maintained the seal, and that was it. The AP suits all had a zipper, and the zipper was in the back, and you went in head first and put your head in and put your arms in and so forth, and then zipped it up the back. The MC2 suit was a good suit. The only difference was it was just an upgrade into the AP suit. A fellow by the name of Dick Willis was at Dayton, was involved in getting both suits going. As far as the Air Force was concerned, naturally they were built by the Clark Company, but the people at the Aeromed Lab, and Willis was the project officer, put the suits together, got an operation, or got a working thing, and then my whole responsibility was to try to improve it in the field or modify it to work however we were going to use it. And we discovered early in the program that, well, before the airplane ever rolled out, that somehow or another these people were going to have to pre-breathe oxygen prior to flight, and we were going to have to dress them, and we knew there would be long delays. So we developed a support band. And basically the support bands that we developed during that period are the same thing that was carried on in all the space programs. They're still using pretty much the same thing.
How long did they have to pre-breathe before the flight?
In the case of the X-15, they pre-breathed for about 30 minutes because we knew they were going to get a lot of pre-breathing in the cockpit button-up, and they stayed on 100% oxygen from the time we suited them, and unless there was going to be a delay. And by the time you put them in the cockpit and whatever, they were going to get another hour of pre-breathing before they ever got to altitude.
You mentioned it was the AP suit was zipped up the back. Was there anything else? Was it a pressure seal back there? What was the actual?
Oh, it was a pressure sealing zipper.
Okay. See,
That was the big
zippers as being something that can come apart.
No, it was a pressure sealing zipper. That was a major advancement when they got zippers that they could depend on and had some reliability. Years ago, B.F. Goodrich made a suit that had a zipper that zipped across the front. The Navy used it and had a good deal of zipper trouble. As a matter of fact, I had one on at altitude when the zipper let go, which is not a very good.
How high were you?
Well, we were in the chamber that day, and we were over 100,000 feet. And Sergeant Crow was master sergeant there. All the time we ever had anybody above 100,000 feet, we always had the senior NCO or one of the officers always had a hold of the dump valve. And the minute he saw the zipper start to go, before I even knew it, he pulled the dump handle and got it down below 35,000 feet.
How long did it take?
Like that.
That fast.
Yeah. Then you start hunting for new eardrums if he goes too far.
That's true. Did you end up with any ear problems or anything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you play in that game long enough, you're going to have ear trouble.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, Crossfield was always saying that he destroyed his ears during all the testing and stuff in the suit.
Yeah, Scott had some little phobias that everybody has their little areas of concern. One of his concerns was it was my impression that he had an almost morbid fear of oxygen and fire. And he was one of the leaders on the nitrogen cockpit and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with it. It was just that he obviously was concerned about it because they spoke about it too much.
It's interesting. You went on to work on the Apollo program, and they ended up with a pure oxygen cockpit. Had to change that though.
Well, I don't know how that all came about, but it was pretty obvious that was a stupid thing to be doing down there at the Cape at sea level, to be pressurized and with oxygen because you get too much pressure.
What kind of problems were encountered in the development of the suit? Was there anything major that?
No, really. By the time Dick Willis and the people at the Aeromed Lab got the suit to us, it would work. You know, there was no question about the suit working all right. The only area problem that we had was that most of the tests at Dayton were done in an environmental laboratory where air conditioned and everything was fine. But you bring it to the desert and it gets 120 on the ramp. And we ran into that problem in a hurry. And in the first test that I ran with it, I'd wear that suit for an hour and I could lose from 10 to 15 pounds.
Great diet.
Yeah, of course, you'd drink water and you're right back up to weight. It was just pure water loss. But then we started worrying about ventilation and cooling, and Bendix Corporation came up. No, it wasn't Bendix. It was Litton came up with the first one. I'm not sure whether it was Litton or Bendix now. Came up with the first of the little portable oxygen converters, and we used them for cooling because you could take the locks and it was colder than Dickens and run it right in the umbilical on the suit and keep people cool, and that's why you always saw them in the X-15 program carrying that little canister.
How early in the program was that introduced? Was that?
Well, that was very early. We started that probably when we still had the MC2 suits. You know, I guess it did come with the AP suit. But in any event, it was an early thing, and we ended up using, Litton gave us the first one, and we ended up using Bendix because Bendix was cheaper. It was that simple. And it was not a complicated system, and they both did the same thing, only one was considerably cheaper. Also at that time we had, Bendix was trying to get in the market, and so they were willing to essentially subsidize it. That's about the way it came out. That's why we got them so cheap. But we ran our own contracting for all of that sort of thing. And nowadays you couldn't do that. It's got to have 19,000 bids and whatever, but in those days, for whatever reason, the government felt that the program was worthwhile enough and that the people involved in it were honest enough that you could kind of turn them loose. And we had an open-end contract where we could just buy anything we wanted, really. And the Quark Company was the manager of the contract, and if we needed nuts, bolts, screws, or whatever, they could go in and buy them at the local hardware store. They didn't have to go through all the procurement problems, and so we ended up, I would guess we paid 1/10 of the normal price for most of our stuff.
A lot more independence back.
Well, that's true. And we had the last contract. When that contract ended, that we've never done again. And of course, I think we had a kind of a wonderful situation at that time. That you had a contractor that was so scrupulously honest, you just couldn't believe it. They would rather take a bath than get involved with beating anybody out of a penny.
It's certainly unusual today.
Well, they still do business with the government. They operate the same way. They, at that time, we bought pressure suits, so, well, the same suit we were buying, and don't quote this one, for $5,000, NASA was buying for anything up to $500. But of course, NASA had to have all the documentation and paperwork.
What is the thing on the shuttle that the paperwork for each one of the tiles on the space shuttle is about, forgot how much the weight of each tile. Got to stack this tall, the paperwork for a tile this big.
Well, the suit that they're using in the shuttle is essentially the AP suit.
Did you work on those?
No. I was out of the service in '67 and retired from industry in '75, so I was all through by the time the shuttle came through.
So were you involved in the X-15 program right up to the end?
Oh, yeah. Well, not really. I was involved with it till '67, and prior to the time of Mike Adams' accident, I was then out of the program because I was then involved with the SR-71 in that program.
Were you still working for NASA, or did you go to Lockheed? Or?
No, I was in the Air Force.
Oh, okay. So you were in the Air Force when you started on the SR? You said you got out of the service in '67. Did you go to Lockheed after that?
No, I worked for the Clark Company after that. As a matter of fact, I worked for them, and they subcontracted me to Lockheed.
That was all here in California?
Mm-hmm. But we had essentially the same suit in the SR and the LAV-12. You know, there were modifications to make it fit, and different types of systems, but the basic suit is still the basic suit.
Was there any major problems that ever occurred on the suit during the course of the program? Was there any pressure failures at altitude?
No, the only time we ever had a problem was Scott cut a glove one time.
I remember hearing about that when he was trying to hit the switch or something.
Yeah, well, he also... I don't want to go into that one.
Okay.
There was a lot of discussion just how that happened.
Yeah.
But in any event, that, to my knowledge, that was the only time that we ever had any problem. We did have some problems with faceplate heat and glare. In order to get, when we started out, we had a gold plated faceplate, which was the heat conductor. And there was a lot of glare in it. So then Libby decided they could make a faceplate for us out of a glass and embed, just like they do now in a car, windshield, the heating element. And we went to that, and that reduced the glare somewhat. But by and large, the gold faceplate was used most of the time.
Was there any polarization?
Yeah, we tried that too, but because of the curvatures and everything, it was a nightmare. Sierrason built some of the faceplates, and I guess they built the last ones.
Could you give me just a basic description of the makeup of the garment, the different layers?
Well, of course, you start out wearing long underwear, and the primary purpose of it was the wicking ability to get perspiration. And when you got perspiration into the underwear, and then with any ventilation into the towel, you could get cold. But without it, you'd really be in a mess. And so then the next layer, obviously, was the rubber layer, or the airtight layer. And then over the top of it, you had this link net. And the purpose of the link net was that it would stretch in all directions, like your skin. It was very effective, but it had to be made form-fitting enough, and it was custom-made for the individual, that it retained the shape that you needed to get maximum mobility. The tighter the fit, the better mobility. So over the link net, you then had the outer garment, which was the luminized cloth, and into it was the integrated parachute harness, and that was basically it. And the MC2 was exactly the same.
What kind of preparations were required prior to a flight? How long did it take to get suited up?
Well, really, you could get suited up if somebody came in and, let's say we had a lot of delays, and then all of a sudden they say, okay, let's go. You could have the guy suited in 15 minutes without any much trouble at all. It was not a long process. It was not difficult.
And then they just made the pre-breathe in the van and stuff in there.
Right, and we would, and there have been a number of flights where there was no pre-breathing whatsoever until they got in the cockpit. And by the time you buttoned the cockpit up and unhooked everything, and they taxied out, and of course we always did all this down the service area, so you know, it was a 15, 20-minute taxi down the runway, and so by the time you got them in and buttoned up, they had 30 minutes, and they'd get another 30 minutes on the climb. And the advantage you had with the X-15 was that it was such a short duration flight that even at altitude, once he launched and started up, he wasn't going to be above 65,000 for any appreciable period of time. And particularly if anything went wrong, he could shut down in an emergency and just go over the top and come down. If he had problems, but he really didn't need to.
Well, when they went out and actually put the pilot into the cockpit and everything, you were involved in helping to put him in the cockpit?
Yes, and what we did, there was a fellow from NASA by the name of Barnaky, Roger Barnaky, and Roger and I had started out when North American got out of the program. We took over, he from NASA and myself from the Air Force, and we started the training of all the people to do this particular job. And for quite a long period of time, he and I did it only because a number of the pilots just wanted us to do it. They get a little confidence and feel that things are going to go well. But normally, I would have somebody with me all the time. A fellow by the name of Don Johnson was one that later retired from the Air Force. And I guess everybody in the shop had a turn at working in the program. It was interesting, people wanted to do it. And Roger had all the people in his shop doing the same thing. And we ended up, don't ask me why, doing one side or the other side. Roger's people did the right-hand side of the cockpit, and we did the left-hand side of the cockpit. Probably because the oxygen connection and everything was on the left-hand side, and we were more involved with that portion of it, so we did more of that.
How about after the flight?
After the flights, we picked them up on the lake bed with our portable van. We'd pull out there and we'd get a cooler out and get them out of the cockpit. And when you did have a ladder, they always had to jump off the thing, and then we'd take them directly into the trailer, and they'd get out of the suit as soon as possible.
What about when they went into a emergency lake site?
When they went into an emergency lake site, we had somebody in a helicopter, usually, and they'd pick them up out there, get them out of the suit, or bring them back. A lot of times they just have a portable cooler and they just come up the ventilator and just bring them right on back to us.
Was there any time that somebody did get out there that the pilot got out himself and was on the lake bed for a while before anybody got to him?
I don't recall an incident when anybody was very long.
Was there any problem with that?
No, I would think if anybody was, I would think it'd be a matter of minutes. It was pretty well covered. There was somebody someplace with all the emergency equipment in the event they did go in any place.
You mentioned that there were later designations and stuff. Was the AP-22S, was that the last designation while in the X-15 program? Do you know if that changed at all?
In the X-15?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the last designation in the X-15.
And it just changed when it went into a different program.
Yeah, and the AP-22S became a production suit in the Air Force. And I think the Air Force bought about 5,000 before we went through. As a matter of fact, we had the depot right there at Edwards, and we built a building with, it looked like a giant dry cleaning establishment. The suits were on a rack going around. And had various stages where you could pull the suit off and do all kinds of different repair functions or whatever was needed. And the test pilot school during the same time that the X-15 program was going on had what they called a Zoom climb program in 104, and so we were suiting all those people too.
Take quite a few people out there, pressure suits.
Oh boy, I should say, we had days where we'd have maybe 4 or 5, well, at least 4 or 5 Zoom flights in 104, and we'd have an X-15 flight, and might even have an SR flight or two.
All the Zoom flights were with different pilots.
Mm-hmm.
So you have quite a few pilots even just in a single day.
Well, those were all size suits, production suits, and all the X-15 suits were customized.
Are they still using those same suits today, or is somebody else taking over the manufacture of them?
No, it's the only suits that have ever been built for the Air Force, to my knowledge, are the Clark suits.
The ones from the SR today are still the ones that were built back in the 60s.
Yes, they've built some new ones since then because it's just attrition and wear. There was a lifespan that they established for those suits, and when they hit the lifespan, it's like aircraft. They decided, well, we'll extend it a year, and that went on several times. But basically, the suits have been kept in good condition by having a good depot. The problem is that we did have one problem in the Zoom program where a guy twisted the lock ring. He was fiddling around, and he unlocked it. And of course, when the suit pressurized, a lot of club blew up.
Besides the Zoom flights and DSR, were there any other programs you were involved in during that period? What about the lifting bodies?
Well, lifting bodies, yes, we had those too, and had suits in those.
Was there any other ongoing research?
Well, I was trying to remember what all was happening at that period of time. We had, well, there were a lot of altitude record flights. The F4, we took care of a guy was setting an altitude record with an F4, and then we had 104 altitude record with Joe Jordan flew. And then we had the 106 record flights, and they wore pressure suits. We put suits in everything. And that was one of the challenges, was to get stuff like that to work in various aircraft that weren't designed for it. And then we had Jackie Cochran came up and did some flights in pressure suits. So an awful lot of people went through that place.
Do you ever still go out there at all?
Pardon me?
Do you go out to Edwards anymore at all?
Occasionally. Robert and I go out every once in a while, but it's one of those things that you just get out of that area, and it's kind of an imposition to go back, and I'm not sure that people back there even remember you were ever there, you know, that are involved in the thing at this point. We were at an era that was totally different from what the Air Force is today.
There's still a few people out there at, I don't know about the Air Force, I know there's still a lot of people from NASA that are there with the
Oh yeah, I see the people at NASA. Well, for example, Fitz Fulton, they're close friends, and they come over frequently. We see them here and over there too. And then Andersons, they've just moved. But Jim Wood's back out there. There's just an awful lot of people that were around. Pete Knight, and we see all our old friends. But and there's still, when I do go out to NASA or go to Edwards, I always go to NASA, and we see the people up there, and there are more of those still there. For obvious reasons, the Air Force people move, and the civil servant tends to stay there by nature of his job.
Did you know a guy named Johnny Armstrong?
Who?
Johnny Armstrong. He was a flight planner that worked for the Air Force.
No, I don't know.
He's still out there. He and Jack Culp were two of the main flight planners. I guess Jack Culp was the NASA, and Johnny Armstrong was the Air Force. Do you happen to know anything about the simulator that was up there?
Sure.
Do you happen to know where it is? Whatever
Oh,
happened?
no. I have no idea. Last time I saw it was sitting in up at NASA in there.
Yeah. Nobody seems to ever know what happened to that. I think somebody just scrap metaled it out or something.
Probably.
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
Well, you know, it wasn't much really in the way of a simulator. It was a total computer and everything was upstairs with a little tiny box cockpit. That's about all it was. They probably turned it into a simulator for something else.
Possibly, yeah. Was in the suit there were all the medical monitors and things like
Mhm.
that. How involved were you with the medical aspect of that?
Well, quite a bit because, see, we had a 102 that we did all the flight tests of the suits. As a matter of fact, there's some pictures of the 102 up there. And the guy in the orange suit is General Wenger, and he was the Surgeon General of Systems Command. He came out because he was very interested in flying. He was very interested in what we were doing, and he was, in some respects, my boss. So he wanted to go supersonic for one day, and he wanted to get to high altitude in the pressure suit. So I took him up, and we did both of those things for him. But we did that 102 did a number of things for us. It was totally instrumented. We did all of the oxygen consumption studies for pressure suits for the X-15 in that airplane. And we also did all the biomedical monitoring tests in it. Almost every flight that I flew in that airplane was involved in a pressure suit. And normally hooked up electrically or medical monitoring.
What time period was that?
Oh, I would say we were still flying it when I left, and we were getting information for other programs at the same time. But we had, I forget how many channels of telemetry we put out, plus the onboard recording. But I think we could record almost 80 channels.
What type of monitoring were you doing specifically?
Well, it was blood pressure and heart rate and respiration. Medically was the primary thing we were interested in. And we always had one of our people, by the name of Dr. Brott. Well, go back, I have to stop thinking about Bert Rowan was in charge of bioastronautics branch. And he's the one that was primarily interested in getting the medical monitoring and the X-15 and whatever. And they did get it in, and it worked, and they got a lot of good information out of it. And then working for Bert was a fellow by the name of Harry Brott. And Harry was a pilot flight surgeon. Both of them were pilot flight surgeons, Bert and Harry. Interesting enough, Harry and I were in the same P-39 squadron in World War II before he went to medical school. And so anyway, Harry then took over bioastronautics when Bert left. And we used to take turns up at NASA 1 on occasion. If Harry couldn't get up there, I'd go up and just watch the instrumentation because I knew enough about interpreting it. At least I could say something. What you're going to say, I don't know. The guy's heart stopped. All he could say is he just died. There isn't much you're going to do about it. But they got an awful lot of good information from that.
Did you spend a lot of time up in the control room during the flights? Is that where you were supposed to be, or did you?
No, most of the time I was on the lake bed waiting for him to come down.
How many people were in your shop that worked on that?
In my job?
Yeah.
Well, we had, over the years, I'm trying to go back now and think about the number of people over the years that were involved. We had John Johnson, about 5 of us, 5 officers, and of course the airmen, we had really the cream of the crop. We had outstanding guys, and they really enjoyed what they were doing. And as a matter of fact, we had a young fellow named Tom Anderson. When he got out of the service, went to work for Northrop, and he's in charge of sales in Saudi Arabia or something. So he's done very well. And all of them that were selected for that physiological training program were selected because of educational background. I think, by and large, we're a little step ahead of most of the people that you ran into.
Even the ones that had finished college, they had basic background.
Yeah, most of them had some college anyway, and almost all of them finished college either on active duty or later.
Can you give me any just general impressions of the X-15 program?
Well, it was one of the fun periods of our life because it was an exciting thing, and I thought the program, I don't recall anybody in the program that didn't get along pretty much with everybody else. The support people were great. The pilots were all good pilots. Didn't get carried away with themselves or the program or anything else. It just was a good, smooth working program. And the North American people that we were involved with were all great. The NASA people, it was just a good program.
How much involvement did you have with North American people throughout the program after they got out of the flight testing?
Oh, a lot of them, we're always there.
Yeah.
We were involved with them all the time. Matter of fact, Toby Friedman was the original flight surgeon for Scott and that group, and he's now one of the team physicians for the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
And Toby and I played football against each other in high school and college. And I see Toby not often, but I saw him a couple years ago, and we had lunch, and we still see each other occasionally. But that's true of most of the people. I see Scott every year at the SCTP symposium. Trying to think who we don't see anything of. Well, of course, Joe Walker and Jack McKay and Mike Adams are dead. Neil Armstrong I see periodically. Of course, Robert lives down the street.
Yeah.
And Pete Knight we see frequently.
Do you happen to know? I know when I interviewed Pete last April, I think it was, he was running for city council. Have you heard? Did he win?
Yes, he did get on the city council.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know if he's still on it or not, but he did.
And he was involved with a lot of stuff. The ultralight program. He was
Oh yeah. The kid did him a lot about not being able to round it out.
Yeah. Yeah, he did pretty good on that. He got the fastest airplane and the slowest airplane. Was there, can you give me any impressions of the pilots and the people that you worked with?
Yes, as I say, we had a great relationship with all of them. I enjoyed everyone. And I flew with most of them, in other aircraft or other equipment. Robert and I were very close all the time. Why? I don't know. We just happened to get along well together. We ended up playing golf a lot together. And Pete was another close friend. My wife and Pete's wife and Joy, Robert's wife, were very close. And of course the Fultons. And other than that, I can't think of any pilot in that program that was a problem.
Can you tell me any more about, well, specifically the ones I can't talk to, Walker? Okay.
Yeah, Joe was just a great guy. He really was. He's one of my favorites. And I enjoyed Joe a lot. He was the most down-to-earth guy in the world. You never had a problem with Joe. McKay was a happy-go-lucky guy. I think he spent less time on the simulator than anybody else. But he just liked to go out and fly. He didn't necessarily care about how the program went. He just enjoyed flying the airplane.
More of a Jaeger type of person, just go out there, seat of the pants flyer type thing.
Yeah, and he wasn't as good as Jaeger, I don't think. But Jaeger, you give him a profile of flying, he'll fly. He wasn't seat of the pants type, but they all were. Everybody was. But most of them were stuck pretty close to the profile. Jack McKay didn't always do that, but that was Massa's problem. That wasn't mine. As far as I was concerned, they were all easy to get along with.
On the flight where he crash landed, the number 2 aircraft, I understood before the gear collapsed, he blew the cockpit and then it rolled over on top of it. In relation to your area, what happened to the suit?
Well, it skidded, of course, on top of the helmet. He ground off a good portion of the helmet.
It didn't actually, but it didn't puncture the suit or anything like that?
No. It didn't, as a matter of fact, if he hadn't had the helmet on, he'd been dead, of course. The helmet protected him enough, but if he'd have left the canopy on, he'd obviously been in a lot better shape.
Yeah, I know, that's what, he got crushed vertebrae or whatever, the weight on the aircraft. I understood that's what the complications were. Yeah,
it didn't create any problems for the suit other than re-fiberglass in the helmet.
Did you know Adam?
I'm trying to remember if he even flew again after that.
Yeah, he did. He was on flight test again 6 months later.
I can't remember if he flew the X-15 or not. He was complaining about the neck injury, and I don't remember if he flew again or not. He could very well have.
I think he did.
I used to have a record of all the flights, and I probably do somewhere, but I just recently got rid of all that stuff. I put it in boxes.
I've got a lot of things in storage too. I didn't know anything about Adams.
Mike was a real nice guy. I enjoyed Mike. I was shocked when I heard that the airplane crashed and he was killed. And was more interested, I guess, to find out if what had happened, if the suit had been involved in it, and the suit was not involved in it. It was just a problem with instrument interpretation. But Mike was a nice guy.
You know anything about it?
Well, I'll tell you another program we were involved with at that time, Dinosaur, which was the shuttle.
Yeah, well, a miniature shuttle.
Yeah.
How involved were you with that? Was it?
Oh, pretty heavily involved. We were back at Johnsville for all the centrifuge programs, and then up at Seattle with the simulator, trying to lay out the cockpit. We were involved in cockpit layout at that time, too.
You were involved in the X-15 back at Johnsville also?
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel when the X-20 was canceled?
I thought it was stupid. They were so close to being ready to go that it was just money down the tube. It was a one-man job, and it obviously wasn't going to do what the shuttle was meant to do, but it sure would have given the United States a big step forward.
It'd be nice to have a small vehicle that can get up and down. I guess that's what the Russians are trying to develop. A small shuttle like that, along with the big one that's just copied from ours. I understood they actually purchased the blueprints from Rockwell.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I heard you could buy the blueprints for like $5 or something of the entire shuttle. So they just purchased a copy.
Why not?
Sure, it's cheap. You know, let us spend all the money on research.
Good point.
Yeah. How did you feel when the X-15 was canceled?
Well, that was pretty much foregone conclusion. That was running to the end.
You were out of the
I
program
didn't.
before
I was
that.
out of the program, but it didn't. We expected the X-15. You know, it was getting more difficult to get support aircraft. It was getting more difficult to do anything. All the money was being siphoned off to the space program, and so I guess it was reasonable to assume that it was beginning to outlive its usefulness. They had a warehouse full of data, so much data they didn't know what to do with it.
Still don't.
Yeah, and there's so much information in there that someday somebody ought to get at. So I think canceling those programs is just a normal growth. You get expected.
Was there anything special that stood out?
Oh, another one that was going on then was the B-70.
Oh, you're involved in that also?
Yeah. See, they had suits in that, so we were shooting people up with the B-70 also. So we could have, again, all the room flights, B-70, the X-15, the SR-71, or a lifting body, or all of the above, you know, all at one shot. So we had, by that time we had 6 vans, dressing vans, and plus we might even have Jackie Cochran or some other visitor up there doing something. So you just had people scattered everywhere. And you had these vans going. We had took the oldest one, which was a big truck and semi-trailer, and when we were busy, we'd take it down and park it at the test pilot school. So it was fixed. And then they dressed 104 people because you could dress 3 or 4 of them in that big trailer. And then we'd take the small ones wherever they had to go, like over to Palmdale for the Live 12 flights or wherever. So we just had them scattered all over the place. I'd come back at night and never know where half my people were.
I'll throw the lake bed somewhere.
They're somewhere in Southern California.
Yeah. Was there anything else, any special incidents or anything that happened to stand out?
No. Of course, the B-70 crash was a special incident. But the X-15 programs, I can't think of anything interesting, unusual that occurred. We had the usual amounts of aborts where they didn't launch or stop in the program, and then of course we had the explosion on the test stand. And we also had people over there for engine runs. We'd put them in the suit and run the engine in the cockpit.
How often was the engine runs done? Were they done before each flight? Or
Yes.
did they do it before each?
The one interesting thing was that Rushworth would have flown the airplane ahead of Neil Armstrong, except that he had to bail out. He bailed out of a 104, and so they kept him in the hospital overnight because of the possibility of back injury from the ejection. So they moved Neil up to take the flight. So Neil would have flown it behind Rushworth if the accident had occurred.
How far or how long after that accident was he supposed to fly? Just a couple of
Oh, it
days?
was within a week or so.
I take it he didn't get, there was no back injury or
Pardon me?
there was no back injury.
Well, I think he probably had a, slight back sprain, but he still complains about his back once in a while, but I think it's his golf handicap more than anything else.
Then after you left the X-15, you went directly into the SR. Were you,
Well, we were doing all of this at the same time.
or you went into the SR more full time, I should say.
Not really. You just kind of went back and forth from one to the other. It was whatever, when you went in the morning, it was whatever was going on, you did.
What about after you left the Air Force?
After I left the Air Force, it was all SR.
Did you have any involvement with the suits that were being used for the Mercury Chemical Apollo program?
No, only that the Mercury suit was B.F. Goodrich. And the Apollo suit, well, the Gemini suit was the Quark suit. And it was an outgrowth of the AP suit. It was basically pretty much the same thing. They just used new helmet, new neck creams, and some different outer garments for insulation. But it was basically the same thing. They used, I'm sure, a lot of our data. We sent a couple people down there that got out of the Air Force and went to work for NASA. Who've gotten their early training with us. And they went down and carried on, I would assume, pretty much the same program.
But you weren't actually involved.
No.
You never went down as a consultant, right?
Well, yes and no. We had a lot of conversation, crosstalk back and forth, and had more crosstalk through the Quark Company, because the Quark Company used our area. We had two tech reps from the Quark Company in our building all the time, and so they would get inquiries from the factory. We tried not to have too close a hands-on with either side of the game, and so if the Quark Company was running into a problem down there, sometimes they would come out and we'd work on their problem out at our area and then ship the solution back or vice versa.
Do you happen to recall who the representatives from Clark were?
Sure, Norm Foster was one. Another fellow by the name of, see his face just clear as a bell. He worked for me as Jewel Melvin. And Melvin was in the Air Force, started out with us, and then left, got out of the Air Force and went to work for the Quark Company. And now he's down at civil servant, GS 14, 15, whatever. Down south somewhere.
Still doing the same.
No, he's in another area altogether now.
You said you worked for Clark Company. and they loaned you to Lockheed.
Mm-hmm.
Did you stay with them till your retirement?
I stayed with the Clark Company until 75, although in 70, I think it was about 77, 79, I moved more over into management. Didn't have anything more to do with the pressure suit program.
What have you done since you retired?
Consulting, but for the Clark Company, they get inquiries periodically, and I go try to solve them.
When was the last time you did anything?
Probably September.
What was?
Well, as a matter of fact, even more recently than that, they're having a problem with a communications headphone, and we've been playing with it in a Pitts acrobatic airplane to try to see if we can iron out some of those problems.
Where does that mean?
Out here at San Paulo.
Is there anybody else that you can suggest that I should talk to? You know?
In this area, pressure suits, you mean?
Well, anything at all, actually.
Well, Norm Foster is up at Lancaster, who was there from the beginning with the Clark Company. He has a company up there, and I don't really, I'm sure Pete Knight could tell you how to get a hold of him. Norm was one of these guys that could do almost anything. He was a machinist, a seamstress, a welder, whatever. And he was just a absolute perfect guy to have in that particular job. Because at that point in time, you were making parts for everything.
Something went wrong. You were expected to go fix it instead of ordering a part and wait 12 weeks for it to come in.
Well, that's right. We ended up with a machine shop. And in the Air Force, that's illegal. You can't have machine shops. They have a machine shop. Individual places can't have them. So we had a milling machine, and we had all kinds of lathes and everything. And when we first got the big lathe, the IG came around, they wanted to know what it was, and I was kind of stuck for an answer, and I told them it was an injector nozzle sized into it. So they came down and put a nomenclature on the thing, and then the milling machine was a neck ring forming tool. And we had all this stuff on the books, and they had a heck of a time with it. When after I left, and they had to sign off the record, nobody could figure out. They kept saying, "Where's this injector nozzle size?"
What is it?
It's right over there, and they said, "That's a lathe."
And Scott Crossfield wrote a book, Always on the Down, and that he talked about the development of this MC2 suit.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about that the original suit was some olive drab color or whatever, and that they came down and that somebody else, I forgot which company, developed one, and it was silver, and that's the one that everybody liked just because it was really, flashy. And so they changed the MC2 suit with the silver coating. Do you know if is that a true story?
It's a good story.
You know if that's how it happened or whatever?
I don't really believe that's how it happened, but that's all right if he likes that story.
Yeah, that's he seemed to really build that up. He said it was all for the Hollywood flash or whatever. It's silver, everybody liked it. I guess there was something, the other suit got their picture on the cover of Life magazine or something, and it was really a bad suit apparently, but they got the contract because that's the one that looked good.
I don't remember anything about that.
That was back in the early 50s or something like that, I guess. No. Is there anything else you want to comment on?
No. I can't think of anything that, I don't know how I could, there's a million stories you can generate about the program and some of the funny things that happen and the strange things that happen. But I think you've probably got most of those from other people because we all saw the same program, we saw the same stories. The pressure suit thing was, I don't think when the pilots first started, no pilot was very enthusiastic about getting in this tight confinement. The other thing was it was difficult to walk in because the suit was made to sit in. You can make a pressure suit that you can walk fine in, but it isn't going to be comfortable sitting. And that was the way the situation was in those days. And so they made the suit for the seated position. And the other problem was that most of the pilots didn't have that much experience with pressure suits. They didn't wear them enough. You know, they got in them to go fly the X-15, but beyond that, they didn't practice any of their flights really in the pressure suit. Whereas the people involved in it, like myself, that were involved in trying to make a better mousetrap, I wore it every day. So thousands of hours in the pressure suit, and it was got to be a thing with me that I was just as comfortable in it as in a normal flying suit. And I think it's a matter of practice, and that really is what. Well, one day we had Air Defense Command was required to wear pressure suits above 50,000 feet, and they were fought it constantly. And so when General Branch was alive, we had some ADC people down there one time, and he said, "Okay, let's show these people that you can scramble this thing." So we set the 102 up to do a scramble where you have the crew chief start the engine and whatever. And I was just as quick getting in the pressure suit and getting out there as the guy was that was going from church lanes. He probably beat us by 30 seconds, but, you know, what are you talking about? Now, you could sit on alert in that pressure suit with the helmet off and the gloves on, with a ventilator on, and you were just as comfortable as could be. But we also, during that same period of time, were developing get-me-down suits, which was a fully inflatable partial pressure suit, and all kinds of different strange suits that we were trying. And then we looked at the British jerkin system, which is a vest that just comes from here and no sleeves in it, and you wear a pressure suit helmet with it. And it was satisfactory for very, very short term. The problem was if you ever discussed short term with the Air Force or the using agency, they always said, "No, we want short term, but we want mission completion." The minute you say that, you go back to long term.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, those sort of things went on all the time we were up there. There was always somebody coming in wanting something. When the T-38 had a time to climb record set over there, a fellow by the name of Walt Daniel. Walt came over one day and said, "I want you to build me an oxygen system that I can put in my pocket, and I only want 10 minutes." So we took bailout bottles and mini regulators and built him an oxygen system, because they stripped the airplane of all the weight. So we always had something like that going on in that system. Every day was a new game.
Okay. Well, I think I've pretty well covered everything.
Good.
Appreciate your time and stuff. I'd like to maybe go over some spellings of some of these names you mentioned or something.
Oh, okay.
Turn this part on.